Hey, what's up, everybody? We are live again. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Box in One podcast. Today, we're doing a live Raptors postgame show after their 118 to 110 win against the Indiana Pacers. I was going to call them the New England Patriots for some reason. I have no idea why the Patriots are on my mind. But yeah, so 118, 110. We saw a lot of good things. We'll get into. I want to discuss a few things. So I want to get into Nick Nurse and some of the hate that he's been getting on Twitter. I want to get into Scottie Barnes and Dalano Banton, who both had fantastic games. Before we do that, I just want to talk about some of the stats and how the Raptors looked overall today. So if we look, they shot 46% from the field, 46% from three, forced 22 turnovers. Interesting enough, they had 100 shots compared to the Pacers 79 shots. So overall, I think a really positive game for the Raptors, especially with some of the heat that the team has been taking over the past few days with the offense looking a little bit stagnant at times. But Pramit, thoughts on the game?
In some ways, it might have even been more impressive than the Boston game. Just coming off a couple of tough losses, they looked a lot better setting up in the half court. Like the Boston game, they just basically just rim rolled. But today was a lot more of a balanced effort. They were effective at the half court, effective defensively, effective in transition. Just a very well played game by the Raptors on a whole. I think Delano Banton. Every year, there's like a young player that comes out of nowhere for them. Like it started with Norm, and then it moved to like Fred and Pascal, and now it's Delano. And Terrence Davis was that guy a couple of years ago. Now he's gone, but Delano seems to be the latest draft pick out. Not only was he a second round pick, he probably got picked higher than he should have been in the second round. And so far, he's holding his own. And very, very early, but you don't want to get too excited yet. I mean, I would still say energy guy off the bench who can be used in specific situations, but that's been very impressive. Barnes has been great. This is the time for experimenting, I would guess, and figuring things out. And you're still going to have to sort of get through that, the wave of not having the sort of wave of not having Pascal, getting Kem Birch and Boucher, who missed a lot of training camp, up to speed, is like getting their conditioning and their rhythm back as well. So if they can weather this next couple of weeks and come out as a 500 team, I think that's very solid showing on their part.
Yeah, and you mentioned Scottie Barnes, and I think everybody definitely would like to hear us talk about him because today he had 18 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, also a couple of blocks, shot 47% from the field, didn't take a three, which is always going to be the thing that people look to. But Azam, how hard is it to not get excited or overexcited about what Scottie Barnes is doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's at least he's been better than I expected. He's actually, and I mean, he's earned all the minutes he's got, but I didn't expect that he would be this involved this early. That be such a key part. Even today, I think he didn't put up anything in the first quarter, but he came back pretty strongly. Had a 10-point second quarter, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched parts of it, and no, so far I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, I think my feeling on him coming in, and I was both you and I were very high on him. We loved this pick. I don't know what you expected coming in, but I thought maybe if we were able to get 12 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists on average by the end of the year, I thought that would be a good place for him to be. So far, looking at his stats, he's at 17, 8, and 2 assists. I think the 2 assists is actually the part that I'm most surprised about because I thought he would have been a little bit higher. Some of that might be, some missed shots where he set guys up on the break.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what else we could have asked from this guy because he's been far above what we thought he would be giving us.
Yeah, I mean, Season to date, this is not including today's game. So in today's numbers that would have gone up. So in 4 games, going into today, averaging 16.8 points a game, 1.3 assists, 8.5 rebounds, 3.5 offensive rebounds, which is a big number. 3.5 offensive rebounds. I know a small sample size, but that's kind of crazy. Free throw shooting at 71.4%, and that's better than what we thought too. Because he wasn't a really. I mean, shooting was an issue with him, and especially a lot of these guys coming out of college who have shooting issues, they're usually pretty weak at free throws, and being over 70% so far is quite good. Some of them, I think he's getting that extra. Now we have to keep in mind that he's getting a little bit of those again. Without Siakam, there are more minutes for him at the forward position, so he's getting more touches, but he's taking advantage of it. So you can't. We can't criticize that. So far, so good.
Yeah, and you touched on it, like the free throw shooting in college. They do say that free throw shooting is the best predictor of 3-point shooting when you move from college to the NBA. I think he was a low 60s.
Yeah, 62.1. 62.1.
Yeah, and the fact that he's at 70 now is encouraging. We still haven't seen that translate into the 3, but obviously it's super early, so you can't really expect that he's going to come in and just start bombing away from 3.
Yeah, 5 games, and the 3 could take. It's not gonna. It could take a year or 2. That's the thing. I think that it's not like, well, give it a month and it'll come. It's gonna take some time to really. And you see this sort with Giannis only now is, and I don't want to compare him to Giannis, but he's only now not terrible. LeBron took a while before he got to LeBron has never been a great shooter, and I think teams still would rather have him shoot than drive. But even now, it took him a while to get that consistent jumper. I think those big bodied wing type hybrid forwards, just getting those mechanics down and really developing that body control and the mechanics. Interestingly, just to go off topic a little bit, I was listening to a podcast about pitchers in baseball and how historically teams have always wanted to draft big, long, lanky pitchers, and now you're starting to see guys like Marcus Stroman or Sonny Gray come out, and shorter pitchers are doing well, and a lot of it comes down to when you're long and you're lanky, it takes a lot longer to really understand your body and understand and develop those body mechanics and repetition. And I'm tired, so that I can't remember there's a word for it, but being able to develop that muscle memory and all that. Now teams are learning that you don't necessarily have to be tall; you just have to be well built and in shape. So maybe it's to tie it into the NBA, like a big-bodied wing who never really shot a lot. It could take a couple of years before he's a reliable 3-point shooter, and that's fine because he does everything else so damn well.
I mean, you take Pascal as a perfect comp, right? When he was with the 905 his first year, I remember going to watch him a few times. I don't recall him taking any threes. Maybe a few, and we talked about it. I think closer to the end of that season, I remember we were talking about it, saying it's something that maybe he could add. And I think Nick Nurse mentioned it at one time. And maybe his first full year with the Raptors, I think he started to probably do it a little bit in game, but it probably wasn't until his maybe third, maybe even his fourth season when he actually started to do it more consistently, and he was trusted to do it a little bit more. Yep. So, I mean, I'm not saying that Scottie Barnes is going to be Pascal. If that's what he ends up being, I don't know. Is that a disappointment if he ends up being Pascal? Azam, what do you think?
I would think so. I mean, considering they passed over some other sureties to get to him. So you'd hope that there's more ceiling there.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's where he's headed, but I'm just saying as a worst case scenario. I mean, yeah, it probably be a little bit of a disappointment, I guess.
Well, he does a lot of other things.
It's
not really the start
we did, right?
Go ahead.
I missed what both of you said.
Sorry, go ahead, Alvin.
No, I'm just saying we didn't draft Pascal that high. So the fact that he ended up being what he is, that itself is pretty big development for us, right? But Barnes, you would hope it's a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, Pascal in his rookie season, he was starting, but he wasn't really getting touches. He hadn't even played basketball that long. He wasn't even a big minute guy in college, so he had to redshirt and then go down to the 905, whereas Scotty's starting from a much higher level already. So, and it's funny when he said will he become Pascal? Well, I don't even think we know Pascal's a finished product yet. We may not really know what Pascal's ultimate ceiling is until maybe next year, because he's coming back off the injury after that year and a half of being in Tampa and in the bubble, and we all know how that affected him. So Pascal, because he started so late as he started playing basketball at 16. He was a junior, drafted as a junior, went from an energy player off the bench to an all-star in 2 years. The trajectory is unknown, because he shouldn't have even gotten to the point where people are disappointed in him, because we're disappointed in him because we had expectations. So it's just, to anybody who has a prediction on Pascal, well, they're probably going to end up being wrong, because we just don't know.
Yeah, and sorry, let me clarify. I'm not saying in terms of playing style or his skill set. I'm just saying if he ends up being a 23 point per game scorer with some rebounds, the ability to handle the ball. I'm saying if he ends up being that, I mean with an all NBA team under his belt within his first 4 years, I don't think that would be a terrible outcome. Obviously, I do think that we have higher expectations for Scotty. I think the expectation is probably, especially when you take somebody so early in the lottery, I think the expectation is probably multiple all NBAs, 5 to 10 time All-Star, something like that. I think that's what we're looking for from Scotty. And it's definitely looking like that right now. Obviously super early. The Raptors are 5 games into a season. They're 2-3. Things are looking better than I would say that people would have thought after the last game. But I mean, this could go any number of ways over the next, even the next week. If we look at their schedule, let me bring up their schedule. If we look at what their schedule looks like, Magic coming up, that game I'm not too concerned about. Then you have the Pacers again, but then you're looking at the game against the Knicks is going to be interesting. The Knicks just pounded on Philly yesterday, but I mean, I think anybody who's drawing conclusions too early into the season is gonna, you're just gonna frustrate yourself, because this team could go one way or another from game to game.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where things end up. But I like that we mentioned, the 905 and Pascal going down to the 905. And I want to talk about a guy who I thought would have been with the 905 probably to start the season once the 905 started the season. I don't think he's going to get there. He's just looking so good. So Dalano Banton, the Raptors decided to play him in Goran Dragic's position. So Dragic was pretty much. Did he even get into the game late?
Dragic, nope.
So yeah, he was definitely glued to the bench, and Banton came and gave them a lift when they needed it. And Azam, did you know Delano Banton coming into the season? Were you aware of him?
I just heard the name. That's about it. I didn't know anything about him, to be very honest.
I heard about him.
I didn't even know what position he played or which college he's coming from. I honestly, I had no idea.
And Prima, did you have any expectations for him coming in?
I thought he would be on the 905 shuttle, back and forth, similar to like what like Fred and Pascal and Norm had to do in their first year. I really thought this garbage minutes, and usually like from a second round pick, if you're getting like again garbage minutes, you're practicing, you're redshirting, and you're getting 905 minutes, and then you see how he developed into summer league, and then maybe next year he'd get into rotation. I was thinking he's just gonna go down the typical path of what a Raptor late first round, second round pick would have gone. But I mean, again, 5 games in, exceeding expectations. The Nurse seems to love him. Again, like once guys, like again, like obviously with Pascal coming back, he may not get as much, but again, energy off the bench, versatile, multiple position, big guy, and very interesting that you have. So your best player was Lowry, a point guard who leaves, and we talked about this in the group chat. You have a good veteran backup in Dragic, even though he hasn't played well so far this year. He's had a good career, and I've always liked him. I've always liked his game as like a probably better suited as a backup, but can be an effective starter if he's needed.
He's had a few good years.
Yeah, he was
as a starter too,
and he played really well for them in the bubble until he got injured. But he played really well for them. And if he had not gotten injured in the finals, maybe that series goes an extra game. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so like the fact that you lose Lowry, Dragic, and you didn't play Dragic, you have your first round pick Malachi, who I'm sure we'll get to, from last year, not playing yet. And you have a second round pick from this year who's not, we don't even know if he is truly a point guard or not yet, almost getting substantial minutes tonight as your backup guard. That just goes to show you Nick Nurse has balls and he does not care, or that the organization is on board with him. But it's clear that, in my mind, Delano is somebody that the organization is really, really excited about.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So I wanted to get into this. This is a good segue. Not that I want to leave the Delano topic, but because I could talk Banton all day. But the fact of Nurse catching a lot of heat 4 games into the season. I don't know if you guys were paying attention on Raptors Twitter to see what was going on. People were really upset about Nick Nurse's rotations, about how the offense was looking, and like. There's only so much arguing that I can do, and there's only so many ways I can say it's 4 games into the season.
Yeah, exactly.
You need like I don't know what people are expecting 4 games into the season with 50% of the roster being new or new-ish.
Yeah, wasn't it you, Private, that said this is probably going to be a Nick Nurse lab, right? This year's something to that effect.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know a lot of like even the veteran guys, like Fred is going to have to be the lead guard. And during the broadcast, Jack Armstrong was talking about it. Like, it's not even just so much the minutes. He's talked about, he's doing more film work. He's doing a lot of the talking with the players, like that Kyle used to do. So everybody's in a new role. Like, like OG is now becoming like the go-to guy for scoring, not Fred. It's OG. And then Pascal will come back. We'll see what happens there. But we don't. And then everybody else is so young. And then you have Dragic, who's there. Young. I mean, I'm sure. I think the expectation is from pretty much everybody that the Raptors will try to move him at the deadline. So, like, it's still very make work, figure it out. So to say like, oh, he's not running an offense. Well, you don't have. It's not like when you have an established player, and I'm just going to the top of the food chain, LeBron. Okay, surround the guy with shooters and defenders and let him just have the ball and distribute. And you don't have a player to build a system around. You have to figure that system out as you go by experimentation, practice, trial, and error. So they don't have a good you're so early in the year, and this is not a title year. So if then they suck at the half court, guess what? I would suggest they play half court more and figure it out. And even if that means losing. So get ready. Like, I think Raptor fans have been spoiled. And even though the Tampa year was pretty bad, I think a lot of the casuals probably thought, well, once they're back here, they'll be back to a 50-plus win team. And I mean, they may be, but there's so much we don't know that you just have to just go through the games and see what happens.
Yeah, but even to be a 50-win team, there's got to be a lot of pleasant surprises, right? Like just the way it's constructed.
Yeah, exactly. So my point wasn't like my point is that it's not impossible, but what I'm saying is that they could. I mean, we just don't like. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know like the teams that broke out last year, what are aberrations that may have just benefited from a pandemic, from a screwed up pandemic year, versus which teams really took a step forward. So, like, no matter what the record is, we ultimately don't. The way that this team is playing and looking in January, February, March is going to be very different from what we're seeing today, and who's getting the minutes and who's going to score. And we have expectations, but there's no sort of established system, or you don't have established vets, and the vets that they have are in new roles. So it's going to be just learn as you go.
That's fair.
And the thing is that a lot of the backlash that I saw too was over. I don't know if it was directly at Dragic or Nurse's decisions to play Dragic, but it was kind of indirectly about that because people wanted to see a little bit more of Malachi. I get it. You guys know, before the draft last year, I wanted Malachi on this team. We got him. He was my guy. I've always been a very ardent Malachi supporter, but the reality is that you're paying Goran Dragic nearly $20 million, and not that that's the way you're going to make your decisions, but he's getting paid $20 million a year for a reason. He's that type of player that he's actually worth. I mean, he at one point he probably was worth that money. He's still a very effective point guard, and you have to see what you have in him. You can't just not play him because you want to get Malachi or you want to get Delano into the team. I understand. Those are your young guys. Those are the guys that are going to be here. You're thinking Dragic is probably going to be gone at the trade deadline. But the reality still stands that you have to see what you have while Dragic is here. And also, there's something to be said about showcasing him a little bit. Not that you're going to keep playing him and forcing him in just to showcase him, but I mean, you still got to figure it out. It was 4 games into the season. People were freaking out. But when you looked at the schedule, and we talked about this early on, it was going to be a struggle because they played some good teams. They played Boston. They played Dallas. They played, who am I missing here? Chicago. Like, I was expecting three losses early on, and the fact that we're 2-3 is kind of exactly where I expected to be.
Yeah, in all honesty, yeah. I mean, if you have him, and yeah, you're right. It's not just about him paying him that much money. It's if a team has, like, if you want to find a willing trade partner, they need to know he's an effective point guard at a high level right now, and for that, you need to give him some games.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah, like he is a good player. He's been a good player. He's probably still a good player, but he's trying. If you looked at the first few games, like there were guys that were kind of standing in the same area. We talked about this on our group chat. Like the spacing was terrible. The shooting is still like today's game aside, the shooting is still questionable. They're still lacking shooters. So that's going to create some problems in today's NBA just by defenses not having to respect some of the guys that you have standing out there. So today was, I don't think we're this good a shooting team. We hit a lot of threes today. We're mid 40% threes. I don't think that that's going to be common, but there's certainly guys that we have that are capable of it. But I just think that some of the uproar was very premature in the fact that we were just 4 games into the season. And I'm interested to see, I haven't gone on Twitter since the game, but I'm interested to see what some of the people are saying right now, because I'm sure some of the Nick Nurse hate has died down a little bit, but it'll keep coming back, it'll keep coming back throughout the season.
Yeah, and it all comes down to some relationships, managing relationships as well with agents and stuff, right? Like you have a veteran here. Obviously the agents represent a lot of players. You want to have a good relationship. You want to manage that too. So, I'm not surprised that. Someone's got to lose some minutes. At this point, it's Malachi, but I think he'll have a shot.
4 games, folks. 4 or 5 games now.
Now 5.
And again, system figuring it out. Dragic doesn't like. He has to figure out his role in the system. You got to work his way through that because while you want to play in, it doesn't make sense to necessarily. You got to build a system that's more for the collective team and the long-term guys, right? And so sometimes not every player is built for every system. So you got to give it time, and I think he'll be fine. This isn't like an Aaron Baines, okay? Like he'll be like he's a good player, and he'll be okay. It's gonna just take a lot of time and a lot of frustration and ups and downs.
Now, I feel like Dragic and Scotty Barnes have the same agent.
There you go. And this is not something that most people would even consider. But yeah, I mean, not that Nurse is thinking about that necessarily, but I mean, it's got to come into play at some point, in how you manage relationships.
Well, it matters. You should watch. Not watch. There's the book that came out. I read it, but I can't remember the name. About the last year of the gold, like the Victory Machine, about the Warriors dynasty and then how it grew and how it came apart. It matters. Agents have a lot of power, so sometimes even a lot of roster management decisions could just simply be based on who the agent is. Does the relationship need work? And I'm not saying this is the case, but do they have a player that you want the agent to direct over to you guys in the future? Like, is there a free agent they're looking at next year or a trade target or something? Like, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just an intellectual exercise where you just say, okay, well, this guy's not playing well, we sit him, and you have to look into it. That's why being a head coach in the NBA is so hard.
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing I don't want to come across as a Nick Nurse apologist, because there is one thing that I did take exception with, and I don't know if you guys caught it, but in the post game it might have been after the last game where somebody mentioned the ups and downs with there's another player, and Boucher, and Nick Nurse kind of made the comment of he didn't see any ups with Chris Boucher. He had issues. So Nick Nurse did have issues with Pascal, just with some of the things that he did handling him last year. And, Pascal lashed out a little bit and things got pretty heated at one point. And Nick Nurse did mention in the offseason that he learned how to deal with these things a little bit better. And that, you have to manage emotions sometimes with your players. Now, do you guys have any issue with his handling of the Boucher situation? I know Boucher hasn't been great. I don't think anybody's going to make that argument. But do you think there's any world where calling a player out in the media is effective?
Not this early.
I mean, we don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. He's made a habit of doing it quite a bit over his years. I remember the first time he did it with Kawhi. He's like, well, Kawhi is just bored. It's January. He's not trying hard. And then Kawhi apparently the next game came out and had a huge game. He did it with Terrence Davis a couple of years ago when Terrence Davis only played 7 minutes in a loss.
I remember that, yeah.
And somebody asked him, why did he only play 7? And he's like, it was 5 too many. The Pascal situation. Although I don't think he publicly ever called out Pascal. It just the blow-ups became public, but he never went. He always publicly protected.
So the Pascal situation wasn't so much calling him out, and that one might be a little bit different. But I think the Pascal one was more pulling him in games when Nick Nurse thought it was over, but Pascal would prefer to be on the court. It's kind of like as I'm being a soccer fan, the you never pull Lionel Messi from a game. Messi wants to be out there 90 minutes.
Mhm.
Pascal was kind of the same. I think he always wanted to be out there, and Nick Nurse assumed that he wanted the rest and he wanted to be pulled. And I think that was one of the things that Nurse said, that, he needs to learn to understand that a little better. And he's, they've talked it out. And I wonder, they said that Boucher and Nurse had a pregame meeting, and, they talked about things, but I just wonder if that's the most effective way to get something out of a player.
So do you guys think, I mean, Carmen, you said that this has become a bit of he does it quite often, right? Is this a cause of concern, especially with the young group now?
Maybe a little. I remember last year. Remember how last year he was just like going crazy on referees early last year. And didn't he throw his mask at a guy at one of the referees in Tampa? He's had issues holding his emotions back. I know that. I remember the first year, even in the playoffs and high tense games, he seemed very just cool on the side. Like, I remember that double overtime game 3 against Milwaukee when they were down 2-0, and if they lost that game, like, that pretty much would have been the series. And calm, cool, and collected, standing up there, like. But then since he started it, afterwards he started to see some cracks in the armor, and he started to have his moments where he's a little more animated. The bubble showed it a little bit. The Tampa season showed it a bit, and this is just me going completely off the wall. I just wonder if the guy just doesn't have needs to get some, like, he's doing his PhD. He has like 3 kids at home. He's coaching Team Canada. He wrote a book. But, like, maybe the guy just needs a little bit of, maybe the guy needs to take out his time off, like, chill out. Like, I'm just putting that out there. Like, and then sometimes, he's a little bit, like, overwhelmed, and somebody asks him a question, and he just, like, answers what he's thinking, and doesn't take a moment to turn the media filter on.
Yeah, the funny thing is that sometimes, though, like, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how Chris Boucher responds to these things. I don't, this is a player-to-player thing. Some players will react well to it. Some players won't react well to it. Nick Nurse has obviously decided that this might work. But, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily uncommon for coaches across the league to do it. Obviously, Nick Nurse is the one that we see the most. And whenever he does something like this, we're all like, oh, should he have done that? But, I saw, and obviously this is the worst comparison, but I saw Jason Kidd do it in a post-game press conference when he was asked about one of his players not playing, and he did something similar. I think sometimes, like, Pop does it all the time too, right? Like, Pop is a prickly guy, and so maybe we think too much of it just because we see it all the time. It's almost like the case of, you see a player all the time, so you start to see his flaws. Same thing with a coach. You see him all the time, so you start to see his flaws. I'm not sure that this is necessarily a flaw, but it's just a question worth asking of, is this the most effective way? And I honestly don't know the answer. In the book, just to close off the topic, in the book Built to Lose, which is about, like, tanking, and it follows the 76ers in the 2012-2013 season pretty closely. One of the criticisms of Brett Brown during the season was that he treated his players too much like buddies, and like, especially with the young guys, like Nerlens Noel was one of them. He was always like, it was always with kid gloves. Like, he was always very much worried about what like how he would be perceived by them, and I don't think Nick Nurse cares about that so much with certain players. I think he knows how to get the most out of his players, and I'm going to trust him on it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the behind the scenes. We don't know if he's seen some behavioral issues with Boucher or lack of effort, whatever. We don't know. Maybe he's doing a bit much. I mean, it's not so. I don't think that it's that players are soft and like, oh my God, he criticized me publicly. I think it's going to just come down to they may just say, come on, man, like, keep this shit in house.
Yeah.
it's not that they can't take it. It's just that they'll just get annoyed by it because it'll just cause more of a storm than anything else. So maybe he needs to be a little more mindful of that. Like the fact that we're talking about it, like is means that it, people listen to him and to what coaches say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so speaking of keeping shit in house and not letting things get out there, the last thing that I want to touch on, unless there's anything else you guys want to go with, but the story of Ed Rogers and Masai Ujiri. We haven't had a chance to talk about it. I just wanted to go on it quickly. I don't know how much you guys want to get into it, but I think it's kind of ridiculous that it happened, and it's actually interesting that the Raptors, the organization who's known for being very tight-lipped about these things, that something like this gets out. Any thoughts?
I mean, this deserves its own episode, in all honesty, and I think we should do one. Unfortunately, as weird as it sounds, like Masai's story is not even the biggest story in this entire saga.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Like comic relief, right? Like you have one real board, one fake board, and I know on Twitter I saw someone created a flow chart like this is Rogers, and then this is one board, and then there's like a fake board, and then all the decisions going left, right, and center. So that was hilarious. But yeah, going back to Masai, I don't know, man. Like at Rogers, I don't know what his thought process is and how you can't. I mean, besides the fact that he's delivered you a championship, which is great, but all the other stuff that he's done leading up to it, and training center and like putting the 905 in place and everything, the investment, of course, part of it is Rogers' money. That's true, but I mean, he's had a vision to put basketball, like make Toronto a basketball city, right? Just beyond just Toronto Raptors. And I mean, I don't know, we were talking about this, that part of it is, how Masai he could probably bring a WNBA team as well. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that he can do. And the fact that he thinks he's anyone's replaceable at the end of the day, but just over money, I don't know. Didn't make sense to me.
There is some. I do got to read into it a little bit more. And I am not an Ed Rogers fan. I booed him mercilessly at the ring ceremony. George Cope gets cheered, but Ed Rogers got booed, and we all saw how he really screwed up the Paul Beeston. You go to like the fact that you would actually try to replace Paul Beeston, and then you call the guy's best friend in baseball to ask permission to speak to somebody with the White Sox. Like, you're trying to do something behind the guy's back, and you go to his best friend. Like, you fucking moron. Like, or the other story is like, oh well, they had a meeting with the Yankees president to get advice as to who to hire as Jays president. I'm like, what? Like, could you imagine if would the Red Sox go to the Yankees and say, a division rival, and say, hey, who do you guys think we should hire? Like, he's like, oh yeah, to hire JP Ricciardi. Like, they was like, what? Like, so he clearly doesn't. There's clearly some screwed up stuff there. The only thing I'm gonna say in his defense is that, and I wouldn't even say defense, is that there is a lot of family, as you see, his sister went off on him over the weekend on Twitter. There's a lot of backstabbing and stuff being leaked. It does not surprise me that he probably has a lot of enemies in the organization at the board level, at the C-suite level, and they could have just decided to leak it and make it look bad, worse than it is.
Yeah, you know what? That's possible. So one credit you could give him is, I think, he was one of the big players in ensuring a big payroll for the Blue Jays. So I think he's starting to see that big vision that Blue Jays can be a big, could be big spenders and have a huge payroll. And by all accounts, Ed Rogers did play a big role in that. But even beyond that, I mean, still, I mean, there's always been wonky things about it. If you remember when we had Andrew Stoughton, and I mentioned, this is way before, I think it was last season, right, when we had him on, and I mentioned I read a tweet of his like 3-4 years ago. It kind of came across as a Trump supporter, then the picture comes out in Mar-a-Lago. like nothing goes right for him, right? When these things leak out. And I mean, if you start putting little bits and pieces together fairly or unfairly, the picture you see isn't very pleasant, right?
Yeah, I think the funniest part is that he tried to call the NBA and block the move, and the response was, "Well, Larry Tannenbaum is the governor, so like we're not blocking the move." But it's just interesting, and Pramit, you know, all the time that we spent wondering what's going on, why has this Masai deal not been announced? Meanwhile, you know, at Ed Rogers' at his cottage, he's talking behind Masai's back, and like
I may get in trouble here with our small group of listeners, but I've yet to hear any. There's too much power in Muskoka cottages yielded with executives up there, and too many people that are just egocentric and like. How do you you bring a title, you like increase franchise value by like 5 times. The Raptors are worth more than the Leafs.
Yeah.
And are more culturally relevant global than the Leafs.
Top 10, I think, right in the league.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it looks. I don't know how like the whole Tampa thing will affect them and all that, but they're a top 10 for sure. Like globally, they're much more relevant. They're worth more than the Leafs. They're more relevant, culturally relevant, globally more relevant. And you don't want this guy to, you know, it's not like the guy, the two there sat and hung out together. Like if anything, money talks, man. Like success and money talk. Like you don't have to like the guy. This guy's he's just an ego. He's an insecure, comes across as an insecure, spoiled rich kid who wants all the success to be linked back to him. He's probably wanting to give the Jays more payroll because he was more involved in bringing in Shapiro. So he's like, okay, I want the Jays to succeed because I got rid of my guys and whatever. And maybe Masai wasn't his own guy, so he's just so egocentric. He'd rather lose with his own guy than win with somebody else's.
It's just crazy to me that like in addition to the winning on the court and, you know, increasing the value, he's also doing like all this charitable work and like, you know, the whole Giants of Africa and his work in Africa. Like, how could you not want this guy to be the head of your organization? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
I think we kind of have an idea, but I don't know if we want to say it out loud.
No. Let's not say it. So I think this is a good spot to end the episode. I want to thank anybody who joined us, or if you're watching, you know, following day after the game. We really appreciate your support. So if you could just like the episode, subscribe to our content, follow us on Twitter. The handle is right at the bottom of the page. Same thing for Instagram, but that's we're a little bit less active on there. But yeah, just let us know. Just comment on the episode. Let us know what you thought. Let us know your thoughts on the Raptors. Maybe just leave a comment with how you think the season's going to go. But as always, thank you for your support. And I'm gonna end this episode off with a surprise for you guys. I didn't get to do this. I was saving this for the Blue Jays season. I didn't get to do this, and I think what we're going to do is anytime the Raptors win and we do a show, or in the future when the Blue Jays win and we do a show, this is how we're going to end it off. So I think you guys are going to like this, but we'll say goodbye, and we'll leave you with this. Peace, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode.